My suburban housewife began an affair with our new neighbor. When one day I uncovered the truth, I promptly served her with divorce papers. As a result, she is now divorced and without a job. Eliana had always been the epitome of the perfect suburban housewife. With her impeccably maintained home, a loving husband, and two well-behaved children, her life seemed like a picture-perfect tableau of domestic bliss. But beneath the facade of her seemingly idyllic existence, there was a restlessness that gnawed at her soul. Gabriel, their new neighbor, had moved in just a few weeks ago. Tall and ruggedly handsome, he exuded an air of charm and charisma that was hard to resist. His arrival had caused a ripple of excitement in their quiet suburban community, and it didn't take long for Eliana to become acquainted with him. It began innocently enough, a friendly wave across the picket fence, casual conversations about neighborhood events, and shared laughter during impromptu gatherings. Gabriel was a breath of fresh air, a stark contrast to the routine of Eliana's daily life. One sunny afternoon, while their children played in the backyard, Eliana and Gabriel found themselves alone on her porch. The air was thick with unspoken tension, their eyes locking in a moment of shared vulnerability. It was a spark that ignited a fire neither of them could control. As weeks passed, their interactions became increasingly flirtatious. Innocent compliments evolved into subtle touches, lingering gazes, and stolen glances. Eliana's heart raced whenever she thought of Gabriel, and her thoughts strayed from her responsibilities as a wife and mother. The guilt gnawed at her conscience, but it was a sensation she couldn't deny. She found herself making excuses to be near Gabriel, often inventing errands that required her to visit his home. It was a dangerous game, and she knew it, but the allure of the forbidden was irresistible. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across their quiet street, Eliana and Gabriel found themselves standing in the dimly lit space between their houses. The night was filled with an unspoken tension, a palpable attraction that neither of them could deny any longer. Gabriel reached out and gently brushed a strand of hair away from Eliana's face, his fingers grazing her skin. She trembled under his touch, her heart pounding in her chest. With a mixture of desire and guilt, they leaned in closer, their lips inches apart. But just as their forbidden attraction threatened to consume them, a door creaked open behind them. The husband, whose name was David, stood there, his expression a mixture of shock, anger, and betrayal. His eyes met Eliana's, and in that moment, their world shattered. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the distant laughter of their children playing in the backyard. David's voice was cold and filled with a seething rage as he uttered a single word that would change everything: Eliana. Tears welled up in her eyes as she realized the gravity of her actions. Her perfect suburban life had just collided head-on with a forbidden attraction that threatened to destroy everything she held dear. In that pivotal moment, she knew that the consequences of her actions were about to unravel her world in ways she could never have imagined. The confrontation on that dimly lit evening had left Eliana shaken to her core. Her husband David's discovery of her secret rendezvous with Gabriel had unleashed a storm of emotions she couldn't escape. Guilt, regret, and fear clung to her like a suffocating shroud. In the days that followed, Eliana's life took a dramatic turn. Her once loving husband had become distant, his eyes filled with a mix of hurt and anger. The tension in their home was palpable, and their children sensed the growing rift between their parents. As David withdrew emotionally, Eliana was torn between her desire for Gabriel and her responsibility as a mother and wife. She knew she had to make a choice, but the magnetic pull of her neighbor was hard to resist. Determined to save her marriage, Eliana made a difficult decision. She would end her affair with Gabriel, sever all ties with him, and work on rebuilding her relationship with David. But doing so was easier said than done. The first step in her plan was to gather evidence of her commitment to her marriage. She started attending couples therapy with David, pouring her heart out about the affair and her remorse. David, though hurt, saw a glimmer of hope in her willingness to seek help. However, Eliana couldn't ignore the persistent ache in her heart. She missed Gabriel terribly, and the temptation to reach out to him was a constant battle. Late at night, when David was asleep, she would find herself sending him text messages filled with longing and regret, only to delete them before morning. In parallel, David was also taking steps of his own. He had become suspicious of Eliana's late-night phone activity and her increased secrecy. One evening, he decided to check her phone while she was in the shower. What he discovered left him stunned and devastated. There, in her messages, were the remnants of her forbidden affair with Gabriel, cryptic texts, intimate photos, and declarations of love. David's heart sank as he scrolled through the damning evidence. The woman he had loved and trusted had betrayed him in the worst possible way. David confronted Eliana with the evidence, his anger reaching a boiling point. He demanded the truth, and through tearful admissions, Eliana confirmed her affair with Gabriel. David's face turned cold and resolute as he decided on a course of action. Eliana watched in anguish as David gathered the evidence of her betrayal, meticulously documenting every message and photo. He had transformed from a wounded husband into a man on a mission for revenge. The husband who had once cherished her was now her adversary. With the evidence in hand, David began consulting with an attorney, exploring his options for divorce. Eliana, desperate to salvage her marriage and protect her children, realized that the consequences of her actions were spiraling out of control. She had crossed a line that could not be undone, and the fallout of her affair was only just beginning. The tension in the house had become unbearable. Eliana and David were living in a constant state of turmoil, their once happy home now a battleground of hurt and betrayal. The evidence of her affair with Gabriel had shaken David to his core, and he had made up his mind about what needed to be done. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows in their living room, David confronted Eliana. The atmosphere was thick with unspoken emotions as they sat on opposite ends of the couch. Their children were with a babysitter, sparing them the pain of witnessing the impending confrontation. David's voice was measured and cold as he spoke, "Eliana, we need to talk." Eliana nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. She had been dreading this moment, but she knew it was inevitable. "I know," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. David began by recounting the discovery of her affair with Gabriel, detailing the evidence he had gathered. Eliana listened in silence, tears welling up in her eyes. She knew there was no denying the truth any longer. As David's accusations continued, his anger and hurt spilled out. He spoke of the years they had spent together, building a life and a family, and how she had thrown it all away for a fleeting passion. His words were a painful reminder of the depth of her betrayal. Eliana, overwhelmed with guilt and remorse, finally broke her silence. She confessed to the affair with Gabriel, her voice trembling with emotion. She begged for forgiveness, acknowledging the irreparable damage she had caused to their marriage. David's expression remained stony as he listened to her pleas. He had made up his mind, and forgiveness was no longer an option in his eyes. With a calm determination, he handed her a set of divorce papers, his signature already affixed at the bottom. Eliana's hands trembled as she took the papers, her eyes welling up with tears. She looked at David, searching for a glimmer of hope, but all she found was a resolve that left no room for reconciliation. "I've already filed them," David said, his voice unwavering. "Our marriage is over, Eliana." Tears streamed down her face as the reality of their situation sunk in. The life they had built together, the dreams they had shared, had crumbled to pieces. She had lost the man she loved, and she had only herself to blame. Over the next few days, their home became a battleground of emotions. Lawyers were consulted, assets were divided, and custody arrangements for their children were made. The divorce process moved swiftly, fueled by David's determination to sever all ties with the woman who had betrayed him. Eliana moved out of their home, her heart heavy with the weight of her actions. She had not only lost her husband but also her sense of self. The consequences of her affair had left her jobless and divorced, her life in shambles. As she packed her belongings and said goodbye to the life she had known, Eliana couldn't help but wonder if the fleeting passion she had pursued with Gabriel had been worth the devastation it had wrought. She was left with the harsh reality of her choices and the painful lesson that actions have consequences, often far more profound than one could ever anticipate. With the divorce papers filed, Eliana's life began to unravel in ways she had never anticipated. The fallout from her affair and subsequent divorce was swift and unforgiving, leaving her to navigate a world that had suddenly turned hostile. The first blow came when she moved out of their once happy home. Leaving behind the life she had known for years was heart-wrenching, and the empty rooms echoed with the memories of a family that was now shattered. The house that had once been a sanctuary had become a haunting reminder of her mistakes. Simply divorcing her, he wanted to ensure that she faced the consequences of her actions. As the divorce proceedings continued, David quietly and meticulously began to execute his plan. He had consulted with his attorney, who advised him on the legal steps he could take to expose Eliana's affair and potentially gain an advantage in the custody battle for their children. One of David's first moves was to gather witness statements. He reached out to friends and neighbors who had suspected or known about the affair and asked them to provide affidavits detailing what they had seen or heard. It was a calculated strategy to paint a picture of Eliana's infidelity that would be difficult for her to refute. Simultaneously, David hired a private investigator to delve deeper into Eliana's relationship with Gabriel. He wanted concrete evidence of their ongoing affair, and the investigator was tasked with tracking their movements and gathering photographic evidence of their encounters. David also explored the option of presenting Gabriel as a witness during the divorce proceedings. He knew that if Gabriel could be persuaded to testify about the affair, it would further damage Eliana's credibility and strengthen his position in court. But David's revenge plan didn't stop at legal tactics. He was determined to expose Eliana publicly, to ensure that everyone in their suburban community knew the truth about her actions. He began discreetly sharing the evidence he had gathered with close friends and trusted confidants, spreading the word about Eliana's affair. As the whispers of Eliana's infidelity spread through the community, she felt increasingly isolated and humiliated. Friends she had once relied on now kept their distance, and neighbors glanced at her with judgmental eyes. The fallout from her actions was becoming painfully evident, and she realized that her husband's plot for revenge was working. Despite the emotional toll of the divorce and the public humiliation, Eliana clung to the hope of retaining custody of her children. She knew that David's evidence could be used against her in court, but she was determined to prove that she was still a loving and capable mother. The divorce proceedings were far from over, and both Eliana and David were prepared to fight fiercely for their respective interests. As the courtroom battles loomed on the horizon, the tension between them escalated. It was a high-stakes game of revenge and redemption, with the consequences of their actions hanging in the balance. In the midst of it all, Eliana couldn't help but wonder if the price of her affair had been too high. The desire for passion and excitement had led her down a treacherous path, one that had left her marriage in ruins and her reputation tarnished. As the divorce proceedings continued, she knew that the final chapter of their story had yet to be written, and the outcome remained uncertain. As the divorce proceedings reached their climax, the tension between Eliana and David had reached a boiling point. Their lives had been irrevocably changed by the fallout from Eliana's affair, and the courtroom had become the battleground for their final confrontation. David had executed his revenge plan with ruthless precision. He had presented the evidence of Eliana's infidelity, including witness statements, photographs, and Gabriel's testimony, as damning proof of her betrayal. The courtroom had become a place of judgment and scrutiny, where the intimate details of their failed marriage were dissected for all to see. Eliana, on the other hand, had fought fiercely to retain custody of their children. She had sought therapy to address the underlying issues that had led her astray, hoping to demonstrate her commitment to being a loving and responsible mother. Her journey of self-discovery had been painful, but she was determined to emerge from the ordeal as a better person. The final day of the courtroom battle had arrived. Emotions ran high as the judge prepared to deliver the verdict that would determine the future of their family. Eliana and David sat on opposite sides of the courtroom, their eyes locked in a silent exchange of pain and resentment. The judge began to speak, weighing the evidence and considering the best interests of the children. It was a moment of agonizing anticipation for both Eliana and David, as well as for their children, who sat nervously in the gallery. In the end, the judge ruled in favor of joint custody, acknowledging that both parents had made mistakes but also recognizing their love for their children. It was a bittersweet victory for Eliana and David, as they would now have to navigate the complexities of co-parenting in the aftermath of their tumultuous divorce. As they left the courtroom, Eliana and David exchanged one final glance. It was a look filled with a mixture of sorrow and resignation, a silent acknowledgement of the irreversible damage that had been done. Their marriage had been reduced to ashes, and the path to healing and redemption would be a long and arduous one. In the aftermath of the divorce, Eliana and David began the challenging process of rebuilding their lives separately. They both carried the scars of their failed marriage and the consequences of their actions, but they were determined to move forward. Eliana focused on her journey of self-discovery and personal growth. She continued therapy, seeking to understand the underlying reasons for her infidelity and working on becoming a better person. Her relationship with her children remained her top priority, and she was determined to provide them with a stable and loving environment. David, on the other hand, struggled to let go of the anger and resentment that had fueled his revenge. He realized that his quest for vengeance had come at a high cost, and he, too, sought therapy to cope with the emotional aftermath of the divorce. His relationship with his children was strained, but he was committed to being the best father he could be. In the end, the consequences of their actions had reshaped the course of their lives. The affair and the subsequent divorce had left scars that would never fully heal, but Eliana and David were determined to find a way to move forward, to learn from their mistakes, and to find redemption in the aftermath of their tumultuous journey.